here with Jessica Stephenson, who is the head of our sales progression team. I think I said that last time, that you're probably the most important person in this company.
Don't know about that.
Well, you're right, because you get us all paid. And one of the things that we picked up on in our market report for Q3 was the migration of certain nationalities. For the first time, we see a lot of Italian investors that have popped over.
Yeah, this is news. Maybe there's a really good Italian restaurant that we don't know about has popped up.
I think we've seen a lot of people who have came here, probably sometimes to visit, stay for 2 or 3 months, and then think, do you know what? Pricing is very attractive and they want to dip the toe in. So what would you say are the biggest hurdles for anyone coming from the UK or anyone in Europe or the US?
The biggest hurdle you have is getting your money from the UK and into a bank account in Dubai.
So what advice, is there any solution? What advice would you give to someone who wants to do that?
So I would just start early if you've got doing your research. Just talk about doing your homework.
What would you advise to anyone, any prospective buyer who needs to issue a power of attorney? How will that all work?
Best thing that Dubai do on power of attorneys is the remote notary, for sure.
Nice talk. I told you probably
I'll see you in 10 minutes.
More than anyone in the company. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Taking Care of Business. And today I'm joined by, I think I said that last time, that you're probably the most important person in this company.
Don't know about that.
Well, you're right, because you get us all paid. But I'm here with Jessica Stephenson, who is the head of our sales progression team. And one of the things that we picked up on in our market report for Q3 was the migration of certain nationalities. And one of them being, obviously we always do, we've done it for years and years, and we've just been speaking then, why do we do it? About nationalities that are migrating from different countries. We obviously have the Brits, who make up the lion's share of our purchases and our leases. We have French, we have the Russians made a massive impact over the last couple of years. But now, for the first time, we see a lot of Italian investors that have popped over.
Yeah, this is news.
Any reason for that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd love to know myself, really. Maybe there's a really good Italian restaurant that we don't know about has popped up.
Well, there's a lot of good Italian restaurants.
Apart from the food, I think we'll looking just briefly into the sort of economics of it. I think probably very much like the rest of Europe, and not to sort of disassociate a whole continent, but there's a lot of people that are disenfranchised with how their economies are, their like job security, unemployment, opportunities, especially for younger people. I think there has been a bit of turmoil in the Italian economy of late, and I suppose that translates over to people are always wanting to look for a better opportunity. And I think with this, having seen this for the first time with Italians coming into our top 5 buyers, here they are. Yeah,
and I think obviously Dubai it's kind of like it's picking up the pieces, isn't it? And
it's got a good offering, for sure. It's got a good offering, you know.
It has got a massive offering, and I think one thing that we tried to, or we said before we went on camera, is that we don't want to speak about the USPs of Dubai. But I think you've got to sometimes, yes. I think you have to with what is going on here, and whether it be people who are coming here for employment or people who are coming here to invest. The latter, I think, is because Dubai is let's say it's so easy to invest. It's not easy to invest, but it's not as rigid, I think, as what it is in Europe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to throw you a number onto that, I think it was 2.8% GDP growth in the UAE earlier this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's
massive.
You normally see numbers sort of like sub 1.
When we looked at that yesterday, that's a massive number.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's projected as for growth over the next 5 years to be like top 5 countries, I think, in the world. So in terms of what they're planning on growing and the plans to enhance the economy here, especially trade-wise, I think, as well. But real estate-wise, I think when people are looking to come over, like you say, with people are probably used to a lot of bureaucracy in Europe. So like when I think of buying property in older countries that are established for hundreds and hundreds of years, you think of 200-page lease documents.
It's quite easy to do it here, isn't it?
And like language that is so archaic that maybe you don't understand. You need solicitors. You absolutely need solicitors and lawyers to do that for you. What Dubai have, because it is a fairly new country, is that opportunity to start things from scratch and go, actually, there's a lot of technology that we can use. They've obviously have the money to invest in making the process easy. But I think people will be quite surprised how different it is when they're used to buying in Europe or the UK.
So going on to that, when buyers, let's say for argument's sake, I am living in the UK and I think, right, I want to leave town, want to bring my family all to Dubai. Obviously, the first thing that people do is generally get a feel for the place. They rent, they see what it's like for the first 3, 4, 5 months. In some cases, people stay and rent for a couple of years. But what we've seen, I think, over, again, we always say post-pandemic, I think we've seen a lot of people who have came here, probably sometimes to visit, stay for 2 or 3 months, and then think, do you know what? Pricing is very attractive, because we always discuss on the pod about how attractive, and I feel how undervalued the prices are in Dubai. And they want to dip the toe in. So for anyone who's coming over to Dubai, is there much red tape? Is it easy to buy? What are the next steps of what people need to do? Because obviously in what you do on a day-to-day basis, you see this, Jess. So what would you say are the biggest hurdles for anyone coming from the UK or anyone in Europe or the US? What are the biggest hurdles for them?
Well, I think with what you mentioned with people coming over to rent for a while, that's the easiest thing. And that's probably the majority of people. If you are looking to move as a couple or with your family, most people, as you say, they will rent somewhere for a while, decide what area they like, get the kids in schools, all of that. And then that is incredibly straightforward, because at that point you have bank accounts, you've got Emirates IDs, you're fully functional in the country. Where it's difficult is, and there is so much demand for overseas investment. So, but it's almost the demand is sort of the process hasn't quite caught up with the demand. So if we look at, say, for example, as you say, you were coming over from the UK and you wanted to dive straight into an investment. So maybe you have some money that you want to invest, you've heard about Dubai, you've visited a couple of times. Yes, that's where I want to put my money. The hardest thing is, if you are non-resident, is definitely not having a bank account to operate. Because the reason that's so important is because we don't have like the escrow system that you have in the UK. So there isn't that idea of sending your money to your solicitor and them dispersing the funds. How it would work is you would raise your own manager's check. So you have to go into a bank, which is like a bank guarantee check.
Jess, sorry to interrupt you there was, which we can touch on in a bit, something I didn't realise. There is a couple of law firms that do have that facility. Yeah,
but some of the really major law firms will be able to do that for you. Yeah. Of course, there's going to be charges involved in acting escrow, but that isn't the normal procedure. So you maybe wouldn't do that if you were buying a 2-bedroom apartment or a 4-bedroom villa. It wouldn't be like a day in, day out process that you would follow to actually involve a lawyer in that situation. But it is an option, because the biggest hurdle you have is getting your money from the UK and into a bank account in Dubai. So you don't have a bank account currently as an investor. This is definitely the biggest challenge. It is possible, but not easy and not guaranteed to open a non-resident account. So I actually don't even know if I would try, to be honest, with that option. I think banks are so inclined not to hold non-resident accounts. There's a lot of compliance issues with that. It's not really something that I would probably go into.
We've bounced backwards and forwards with. Was it a non-res bank account?
Yeah, it was like a savings account.
A savings account where you didn't get a checkbook or you didn't get.
You could still kind of operate an account. Yeah.
And then it came back, if you remember.
It changes very often, to be honest. Yeah. So that's the biggest challenge, and that is something that does need to be looked at overall as to how people can invest, because there is so much demand to it. So unless you have a very good trusted friend who you'd send a couple of million dirhams to go and get you a manager's check, I think that's the hardest thing. We are, of course, looking always at options, because, as I say, people do want to move their money here. And one of them that we were exploring was the idea of opening like an offshore company, like a JAFSA company, or one of the other like free zone companies in Dubai, and then from that company then buying the property on your behalf, you maybe being the sole shareholder of that, and that company giving you a bank account. So this, I think, is something that you'd have to be a lot of forward planning. It's not something that you can just sort of go, I'm going to open this instantaneously online. So that is an option that we're looking at for people to try and open the bank account before, because it's like a kind of chicken and egg situation. Like, I want the property, but I need an account to get the property.
What would you say, what advice would you give to people? Let's say there is an opportunity to that.
Yeah.
I think when you open a company over here, you've got to spend, I think you've got to be over here twice a year. Is it every 3 months, every 6 months?
I think it's 6 months to keep your visa open, but I think it'll depend on maybe nationality and the where the company's formed.
But obviously in that time frame, obviously we have let's say a 2 to 3 month cycle.
Yeah.
In that time frame, there will be instances where someone they will see a property online, or they will come over and if they're with the family, they go out viewing with one of the agents and they will see a property then.
Yeah.
Like you said before, it's something that you can't really do where you go, right, I want to pull a pin and I want to buy that property because I don't have a bank account. So what advice, is there any solution? What advice would you give to someone who wants to do that, who came over with no intentions of buying something, but then found something? We give them, we guided them down that route with opening a company. How would they overcome something like that if they wanted to sign into a contract?
Yeah, I would definitely just start early would be my advice, even if you've got any thoughts about this. But I think that's the world over, really, isn't it? You know, there's not many places where you can operate instantly. So I think just starting early, doing your research. Of course, we'll help in any way that we can to see what options people have. But I think that's a fairly straightforward process. And also owning property in the company, as long as it's one of the sort of Dubai offshore companies, you own it directly yourself, is pretty straightforward buying and selling process. So I would just start early if you've got doing your research. It's all about doing your homework.
It is, it definitely is. Do you
think boring stuff?
It is, yeah. Do you think that there will be potentially something in place for, let's say, because this is all very wishy-washy, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be,
so.
The governments are going to bring something in whereby there will be some sort of escrow and holding account?
Yeah, I think I would imagine it's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
There were some systems that were sort of forced during COVID because you couldn't actually operate like that. So it did briefly exist. So I think it's there in maybe embryonic form, and maybe in the next, 5-10 years, we might see some changes there. How that will work, I don't know, but I really hope so, because there is definite demand for it. And it's security for both parties. At the moment, it is archaic, but it does work in the sense that I give you my property, you give me the manager's check. Like the idea of exactly.
Yeah.
And that works because it is so simplistic. But there comes a point where actually the logistics of this, it isn't just expats that live here that are buying, it's people from all over the world.
And that's
that I think will be addressed.
Again, although the UK has the pros and cons of when you are buying it, you don't actually have to be physically there. Whereas here, you have to be physically here or issue a power of attorney. It's something I wanted to speak about. We were speaking before again with regards to remote power of attorneys. Now, I wasn't going to bring this up because, again, it's a bit of a grey area. But because Dubai is a logistical nightmare at times, especially in the summer months. Obviously, we've just come out of our summer months, and people travel. In some cases, there'll be 4 people in the whole deal. 9 times out of 10, there'll be someone traveling, maybe 4 people traveling. What will you face, or how will you advise, or what will you do to overcome that where people are traveling a lot?
Yeah.
What will you advise to any prospective buyer who will just travel or needs to issue a power of attorney? How will that all work?
Well, it can be a minefield, so I'll keep it as simple as we can. The best thing that Dubai do on power of attorneys is the remote notary, for sure. And people really take this for granted here. They think that having documents attested overseas is such a chore, because this is something that is very unique to the UAE, that you can jump on a Zoom call with the public notary and they will attest your power of attorney over a Zoom instead of in front of you. Yeah. Now, I know at the moment, and this is very classic of sort of the hurdles you face in the industry, is that has been possible for probably the last 3 years pretty consistently. Mm-hmm. But recently, in the last couple of weeks, the court informed the notaries not to issue the remote power of attorney if you are non-resident. So now they're the people that this appeals to most. Yeah. So if you are non-resident, you're overseas, they're the people that really want to use this service. So we think it will come back. That's our understanding. And it might be like temporary for a couple of weeks. But these are the kind of moving parts that you always have to consider. Yeah. But if you are a resident and you already did travel and you think, actually, I'm going to extend my holiday for a little while, you can still do the power of attorney remotely. And you can really do it any time of the day and night. I mean, we've had clients on when they finish work, like eating their dinner, like getting on to give a power of attorney. So that is incredibly straightforward. That's the easiest thing to do. Leave somebody with a power of attorney.
I think it's so important, obviously, that we will find a lot of, let's say, disputes, or we'll find a lot of issues when we are progressing the sales is because someone's not there.
Yeah.
Someone's traveling, or they haven't told, or the agent hasn't asked, or they haven't told the agent that they're traveling.
It doesn't feel important. Why do you want to know where I'm going? Or I've got this trip planned on Wednesday to Monday.
Yeah.
Well, why do I need to tell you? It just doesn't. I don't think it feels like something that should be that imperative to know. But definitely, you need to share travel plans and just one more person to tell about your arrangements. Really.
Have you, obviously, you're at the forefront. Have you noticed? Obviously, there's a buzzword around the high net worth individuals. Have you noticed, because you're obviously transferring, or your team is transferring the properties, an influx of more to our company, an influx of more of these individuals who are looking at buying plus $10 million, plus $20 million? Have you? Because we obviously still to this day, and we've covered it in a few of the podcasts and H1 and still even Q3. The majority of properties that are transferring at the land department are sub 3 million dirhams.
Yeah.
I think in the first 9 months of this year, there's still, I think there was 277 transactions that were over $10 million. But it seems like there's probably 3 times as many as that.
Yeah.
Do you feel that we are going to see a significant increase in this?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. I think in the media, they can get completely overacted a little bit, and you see like the same unit potentially. So it might feel like there's more of it happening, but it is true that there are definitely more high net worth people buying here. I think as a business, as you say, we very much reflect land department in that we're very, that kind of average price point of the is it about $600,000, something like that, being like a kind of average price.
It still works out. I think over Q3, the average sale price was 1,400 dirham per square foot.
Okay.
Now, work that backwards again, let's say to the UK, it's significantly lower than what you would find in one of your, let's say in London or places like this. It's significantly lower. And again, going back to what we always go back to, it's still a very attractive place to buy. For
sure. But the over sort of $10 million market isn't something that we were hugely involved in. We are quite an end user business. Doesn't mean that if you've got over $10 million, you're not going to use the property yourself. I think it's actually
the city, Jess, with the most transactions over $10 million.
Yeah, which is huge for considering you have like London, LA, you have so many places in the world.
Do you think, going back to what we spoke about at the start, sorry to interrupt, what we spoke about at the start with new nationalities coming to the forefront, do you think that is because they are seeing attractive prices and they are seeing that sort of
prices? And I know that we promised not to talk about how good the lifestyle is in Dubai, but I always say that it's a place where you're allowed to be successful and you're allowed to be wealthy. And a lot of places that's sort of like, it's almost sneered at. And no one really cares. No one really cares. So go on, if you want to go down Fashion Avenue, get yourself away. And I think that it's a place where you're allowed to have beautiful big apartments and you can be more excessive. That is a small part of Dubai. There is so much normal life, people dropping off the kids, picking up the shopping, that all goes on. But definitely there's a certain appeal to Dubai that you can be wealthy and really enjoy your wealth and enjoy your success here.
Without anyone having an issue. Exactly,
without it being obnoxious and having there's a lot of service-based apps and businesses that are just amazing that were like brought from the UAE, ideas that have really took off that probably wouldn't take off anywhere else.
I want to finish on something, and obviously we haven't got a crystal ball, but I want to, because obviously you've been doing this job for such a long time. What would be?
Old.
I know, well, you
get a very long time.
You are getting on. What would you implement? Let's say if you were the powers that be, what would you implement with your role or the whole sales progression or conveyancing role? What would you have in place to make it more streamlined? More appealing for investors alike overseas to invest into Dubai? Is there anything that you would take from other economies and bring over here.
How long do you have? That's okay.
A few more minutes.
Okay, I'll keep it to probably a couple of core ones for me. There's the need to get an NOC from a developer, which is a no objection certificate. That's the developer giving the okay for the transfer to go from one person to the other.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in again. Do you think one unified NOC would solve every issue?
Yeah, well, I actually think, this is really controversial, you probably don't need an NOC.
Okay.
So as long as the service charges are cleared in the Molex system, which is like a unified system for land department, I think there's probably, to an extent, a need to maybe inspect the property or see that they've got that it is compliant in terms of regulations. If you've done any extensions,
The developer,
that it's
you mean?
still safe. Yeah.
Okay.
But otherwise, I don't think you need an NOC. I would probably take that process out.
Okay.
And the other one is when you settle a mortgage liability, you have to wait for the bank to issue clearance documents, which used to be the original title deed and 3 original letters. Now, the original title deeds, they went 3 years ago, so it's blockchain, their QR code. There's not many original title deeds around anymore.
Only the IFC, I think it is. You got to have
The IFC, you'll have to bring the original back, but they have issued also the digital ones as well for new sales.
Yeah.
So if the system with the bank links to the land department system and says, now this is not a mortgage property, there's no encumbrance on this, that could happen blockchain-wise and digitally. I don't think there's a need to wait sort of 10, 15 working days for a bank to produce a letter.
Yeah.
I'd probably go with those two. And both of them are probably related to the same thing, like digitalization. I'd say those two things would make things smoother. And the obvious one that we were talking about, some way of an escrow account.
That's the big one, isn't it? Because there's so many changes all the time.
Yeah. But things happen quickly here. Decisions are made fast.
That's what I like. And I think if you remember, to finish on, when we were coming out of COVID, we had, we call it pipeline. We had so many deals that were looking to transfer. And we actually spoke to the land department. If you remember, we spoke to the land department and we spoke to the trustee officers about some type of remote service. They listened to us, if you remember. And
did? Yeah.
We were doing remote power of attorneys, and we actually done remote transfers as well.
Yeah, and some of these things stayed around, like the remote POA, which is brilliant. But yeah, I think there's definitely still changes that could come. Yeah, for sure. And we'll always attract new people into the market.
Good. Jess, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Nice talking to you again. Nice talk. I told you probably
I'll see you in 10 minutes.
More than anyone in the company. Thanks very much for joining in, guys. If you liked what you saw today, please like and subscribe at the bottom, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.